Hi, welcome to Mountain Gym Card Collectibles. So, I've noticed something within the realm of sports cards lately, and that is how Topps Fanatics is always trying to give us this narrative that sports card collecting has a big tent for people who are chasing, the better sports cards, okay? And I would argue against that. The more that I look at modern sports cards and, how monopolistic and how greedy, the corporations have become, I'd say that the tent keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. So, you know, sports cards in the 70s, 80s, and 90s had a really wide open tent. In fact, you didn't have to have a lot of money to get into the hobby. Trust me, I live that. I could buy sports cards just collecting cans, aluminum cans, and with $5, I do pretty good. Okay. And so there were multiple brands, that were keeping the prices down as well. And I like the fact that the competition really drove up better sports cards, better designs, and that's the great thing about competition. So, you know, sports cards in the 20th century, early 21st century, for the most part, had a big tent. Everybody and anybody was welcome for the most part. You didn't have to, be a wealthy person to enjoy this hobby. You didn't have to buy into breaks. You didn't have to gamble. You could just be who you wanted to be. And that's what I like about sports cards is, the rest of the world, during this time was very closed. I would prefer to collect sports cards, say, than going golfing. Why? Well, when you go golfing, it's expensive. It was expensive in the 80s and 90s, and it's still expensive. And there's a lot of other hobbies that are really expensive as well that I probably wouldn't enjoy as much as just ripping a few packs of, baseball cards or chasing some old garbage pail kids, whatever. It was affordable. And in a world that really makes things difficult, that's the awesome thing about sports cards. But what we have now is what I like to think of as a very small tent. And so I pulled this up today for one reason it popped up on my algorithm. And it's always Topps trying to sell us this narrative, that, hey, it's still the same old hobby as it used to be. Hey, it's a big tent. Hey, just like the old days, kids are finding awesome sports cards. And the thing about it is what I've noticed is more and more people aren't buying it anymore. People aren't buying the narrative. And I believe that when people stop buying the narrative, sports cards are going to start kind of going downhill. And you might see prices going down on singles and this and that because more and more people just turn their backs to it, okay? So like it says here, crazy. Their 13-year-old son pulled the one-of-one LeBron James autograph from Topps Chrome Cactus Jack. Yay. One of one. Beautiful card. 13-year-old, huh? Just like when I was a kid, huh? 80s and 90s. Okay, well, right out the gate here, what do I see? Well, Topps is always going around like the boy who cried wolf, shouting from mountaintops, hills, tops of high-rise buildings, it seems like. They have to get on social media. And basically, what is the boy who cried wolf always crying? And in this case, it's Topps Fanatics. Someone found an awesome card who's not a breaker. Guess what? A non-breaker found an awesome card. Yes, a normal person found an awesome card. And I always see Topps Fanatics just pushing this narrative. over social media, And then we get to see the comments and the replies to it right out the gate. Lucky pull, kid's got that OG bloodline. Okay. Yeah, lucky pull. Then we have this one. Chasing hits in sports cars is worse than gambling. You can really spend $1,000 and only get back a couple hundred. Yeah, and that's just it, is putting these big, massive prices on boxes of cards, Yeah, it can destroy you. And it never used to. Remember, it used to be a big tent. Now it's a very small tent, only meant for a very limited few who can afford it. Here's one. I'm sure his 13-year-old son is buying these boxes with his own money. Yeah. Yeah, it's not the 80s and 90s. You can't just go and collect a few cans and roll on up to the, convenience store and have a great time. It's not that world anymore. And it's not that world anymore because of very wealthy people, okay? Let's just pretend, that things are different. And that's really what the top social media really is. It's always trying to kind of act like that we're still back in the 80s or 90s when really this was a closed door hobby. And I know that sounds crazy to a lot of people to hear that this is a closed door hobby. Well, most of the breaking goes to breaking companies, okay? Whereas in the past, it was always the consumers, okay? And so when you get stuff like this from Topps Fanatics, I just feel like most people in the hobby are just getting exhausted, okay? Like right here. Must be nice to be rich enough to buy your child a $500 plus box of cards. Yeah, I mean, and that's just it, is people are seeing through the BS that Topps Fanatics is throwing at us. And I'm waiting for the day when the hobby just begins to crumble because of this fact. Because to me, this is a hobby that's meant for breaking companies, really. You might see a few guys on YouTube, ripping a few boxes here and there, but I'm not seeing as many people even doing that because the prices are just so out of control. Congrats to that kid's college fund. Now, why are they saying that? It would be like, I'm never letting go of this card. Why? Because I'm a collector. This is all about investment. This is all about going to Wall Street. And yeah, I know I don't get a lot of engagement, on my channel. And I understand why. Because people don't like to hear it. They really don't, And so I love it that people just aren't buying the narrative anymore. The narrative is breaking down. The false belief that, that this hobby is a big tent hobby, to me, is cracking. It's a small tent hobby meant for a very limited few. And that's why you see Topps Fanatics always going out of their way to be the boy who cries wolf. Oh, someone found an awesome card that's not a breaker. Oh, every now and then it happens. And every now and then when it happens, Topps has to come rushing in to pretend that it's a different world than it really, truly is. This isn't the old days. This is not a big tent. This is a closed door. Don't pretend it's not. So anyway, how do you feel about this? Are you getting exhausted with the narrative from Topps Fanatics where they're trying to pretend that this is almost like the 80s or 90s again? I am. And that's just because I can see through the veil. It doesn't take much to see through the veil, to be quite honest. All you have to do is have a limited budget and start to, try and get into this hobby and try and buy what you want. And you start to realize, you're always going to get priced out by this person or this person or, this flipper or, this scalper or, this breaking company, Anyway, I'd like to thank my subscribers. Thank you for sticking around. I know this channel doesn't get the most engagement for a lot of reasons, but I appreciate you watching my episodes. And if you could give me a thumbs up, I'd really appreciate it. And hey, leave some comments. Comments are great. And then I'd like to thank my viewers as well. Thank you for watching my episodes. If you could hit the subscription button, I'd really appreciate it. Anyway, hope you have a great day. I'm out of here. Bye.